Our next session is session 2, land acquisition tools from state and federal government mentors. For part 1 of the session, we'll have Judd Vickers, who is the acting director for the land acquisition and planning unit at the Department of Natural Resources. And from HUD, we'll have Jorge Morales, who is the lead loan financing specialist from federal HUD Section 108, and Erik Pechuekonis, the Community Planning and Development Specialist, also from HUD Section 108. I also just wanted to know, I think lunch is scheduled to arrive a little bit early, so if you guys start noticing boxed lunches arriving, once it's all set up, feel free to go over there and take a box. And then also, we have an abundance, as you can see, of donuts and coffee left, so if anybody wants to take a box of donuts and a box of coffee, please do that. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'll be quick. I'm sure everyone's as hungry as I am. My name is Judd Vickers. I'm the Deputy Director for Land Acquisition and Planning, which is a unit within the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. You probably wonder a little bit why I'm here. Our unit is tasked with administering the program open space program for the state of Maryland, which you've likely heard of in local government. There's a local side to that, but there's also a stateside component to that. And we often work with our partners at the Maryland Department of Planning as well as Department of the Environment, and Jason had asked us to come here today and talk a little bit about what we do. So Program Open Space was established in 1969. There's a rather robust funding mechanism for both stateside and local programs. On the state side, we are buying properties typically for additions to our wildlife management areas, state parks, and our state forests. We've just somewhat tongue-in-cheek named this presentation Dump Spills and Fuel Tanks, Oh My, because those are typically the things we run into. Does anyone have an idea of how often we would order a phase 1 for any of our acquisitions? Every time. That is the correct answer. Even when it looks completely clear, it's been surprising what can turn up. So we order phase 1s for every one of our transactions. We make sure that we have a budget in our transactions for phase 1 and phase 2s when necessary. On occasion, a seller will provide a phase 1 in advance, which is helpful. It gives us an idea of what might be going on, although we want to make sure we're an intended user for that phase 1 as well. Once we receive that phase 1, we review it thoroughly. Internally, we look at it in our land acquisition unit. We also work with the managing unit to look at that, review that, as well as engineering and construction. And it also gets a very close review from the Office of the Attorney General to see what potential liabilities may exist. Hopefully, there's no recognized environmental conditions, and then we're able to move forward with the acquisition without any further issues. However, we're not always that fortunate. As I said before, we can typically find a fuel tank, something that has to be potentially pulled by the property owner, which we would require them to do typically in advance of the closing. Am I creating that? Okay, sorry about that. We would have the seller really remediate any of those conditions in advance of the closing. And at that point, we're really starting to engage with our partners at MDE to help us facilitate this process, make sure we're doing this the right way. We're not the experts. We're relying on the experts to make sure we buy a clean and remediated site. So a couple of examples that we have that might be helpful to you. One of the things we find often are farm dumps. You always want to look at the edge of the woods. You'll be surprised what you find, often overgrown with vines. Once those vines are pulled out, you might find all sorts of things, old cars, drums, barrels with who knows what in it. One example recently was a farm dump we found, and we had our inspectors with our environmental services company go out and look, watch the material being removed by the property owner. Once that was done, we found there were no further conditions. There was a little testing to make sure there were no spills. Everything was fine on that site. Farm dump number 2, we weren't as lucky. They pulled many of the items that were found, including old drums, and determined there had been spills, and the property owner wasn't willing to remediate, and in that case, we didn't move forward. And that basically sums up our process. I would encourage anyone in state government or local government to really look closely at getting phase ones and exploring these issues, asking questions of property owners, just trying to find out. We even have an initial survey we send out to property owners to just ask them, what was the past use of this property? What went on this property? We look at the title as well to try to give us an idea of who the past owners might be. Was it a residential? Is there many things you can find out there that really could be a stumbling block or create a problem for you when trying to acquire property in government? So, thank you. Any questions?
Now we'll move into part 2 of session 2, and I mentioned Jorge and Erik are here from HUD earlier. I didn't mention Sean. Sorry, here's Sean. Sean Dennihy-Bailey. So we have 3 presenters from HUD.
Good afternoon. My name is Jorge Morales. I'm the lead financial specialist with the Financial Management Division at HUD under the Office of Block Grant Assistance. We are very delighted to be here and to present to you some of the information related to Section 108 and how that financing tool can be used to the max in this type of projects of remediation and acquisition. So with that, I will leave Sean Dennihy-Bailey and Erik Pechuekonis. Both are loan officers at the Financial Management Division, which manage and administer the Section 108 loan assistance program.
Thank you, Jorge. Do we control slides? We do. Great. How's everybody doing? Right before lunch, it's a tough time slot. We're going to talk about loan guarantee program. I promise. We'll keep it light. We'll keep it quick. And we really want to give you an overview of our program that we have because we think it can be a great benefit to a lot of people in this room. So quickly, I'm Sean Dennihy-Bailey, Community Planning and Development Specialist. I will be talking to you about the Section 108 Loan Guarantee Program overview, the funding potentials, and we'll talk about the framework of the overall program. And hopefully, if we have time, get into some use cases and examples. And if we don't, always feel free to grab us. We're always happy to talk about our project and the ways that we've impacted the community. So really quickly, Section 108 Loan Guarantee Program overview. It utilizes the Community Development Block Grant Programs framework, and if you're familiar with that, right, it comes with a lot of federal regulations and rules, which really just gives us boundaries and guidelines to operate within. But what's important to know about our program, and this is one of the biggest takeaways of today, is that we are a loan guarantee program. Right? We're not federal funding. There's not an appropriation every year from Congress. We work with the private market to help assist projects get access to low-cost financing. Right? So that's a big one. If you're going to write it down, take notes old school on pad and paper. Right? We're a loan guarantee program. We use the full faith credit of the United States government to back these projects that otherwise may have been a little, not appetizing to some private banks. Right? We can help you bridge that gap and get access to, substantial sums of money to help improve communities in our areas. We offer competitive terms and rates. Right? We're very flexible. That's one of the things I love most about this program is its flexibility, and that extends into the terms in which you can operate. If your project's going on for 2-3 years, that's fine by us. If it's going on for 20 years, we can make that work too. It's great. You are taking on a debt obligation, and anybody in here, I'm sure, has student loans or a mortgage, things. It's a big commitment, right? And so we can be flexible with that and work with you to ensure that resources are getting to the communities that need them. My other favorite thing, right on the front slide, is our technical assistance. I mean, you're looking at the Wonder Team here. We're here to help you with any question at any point, at any time, throughout the entire length of one of these loans. So whether that's tomorrow, and we're talking about a pre-application and ideas and ideating on what we could do, what we could fund or following up, or if it's 20 years from now and you're looking on your next Section 108 loan, right? We're here to help you at all times. So really what makes it so useful, we like to break it down in what we call like the 4 jewels. There's a wide range of uses. As I said, we fall under the CDBG framework, which really allows us to fund a wide range of potential projects, including land acquisition, brownfield remediation, cleanup, development, adaptive reuse, like the building we're in today, which is a Section 108 utilizer. We can hop into any phase of the project, so whether it's pre-planning, identifying what the potential project could be, or development, pre-development, land reclamation, et cetera. Oops, slow button. So yeah, we offer low-cost financing, and this is where we tie in with our partner at the Bank of New York Mellon. Section 108 loan rate, right? So it's a loan guarantee, we back it. It utilizes a 3-month treasury bill plus 35 basis points, which today brings us in the 5% interest range, right? About 5.25%, which is phenomenal in today's high interest market. Like I'm somebody who's looking for a home with my family, and the numbers are a lot higher than that, and they can be a little scary. So other projects could be a little intense. Terms up to 20 years, like we said, we can be flexible for whatever your project demands. There's no early payment penalties. There's no, kind of fees or hidden fees are trying to get you, right? This is just a loan guarantee program. We bridge the gap between private financing. And at certain points, right, you enter in, not to get too into loan language, but when you first get your loan guarantee, it's a variable rate note, so it can change with the market's tied to the 3-month T-bill. But every so often we offer in public offerings, and we can convert it to a fixed rate note, which is great when you're working in a county debt budget offices, you're trying to concern about that. The flexibility comes in, again, with the various sources of repayment and collateral. This is where our tie-in with the CDBG framework really shows, is that you can use that to back your loan guarantee, right? So the federal government knows that there's funds coming. So if you're an entitled community, which we will get into, you can use that as security for your potential loan. We're also flexible with secondary security for your loan. So if you're taking out a larger loan, you may need to back it with potential real property, cash in a bank as a debt service reserve, right? We can be very, very flexible in what we consider secondary collateral. Finally, the wide available range of funds. Because we do not have a allocation, we are available 24/7, 365. Right, so whenever a project comes up and it has a need and you're looking to potentially fund it, right, we're available for that. And again, there's dedicated one-on-one technical assistance throughout each one of these steps. I know we're going to move kind of quick here, and you're like, wow, taking out a loan shouldn't be this easy, but we're trying to make it that way. Okay, so Section 108 borrowing capacity. So this is really a huge element. You can take your CDBG allocation, so your community development block grant, if you're an entitlement community, and what's available to you, and multiply that 5 times, right? So our program loves leverage, right? We love leveraging this program. So we start off by taking that allocation and leveraging it 1 time. So you have $1, times it by 5. Now you have 5 times that amount. Because it's tied to the federal program, the CDBG, we have to remove any outstanding 108 commitments. So if you are familiar with the program already and you have an outstanding loan, we remove that to calculate your available borrowing capacity. And it's just a quick way to do that math, right? So if you see that your potential partner or your community has $3 million available in this year's CDBG allocation, right, it gives you a potential of $15 million. However, take into account your commitments and existing balances, brings you about 12.2. So just a quick example there. Also, we have our website. In fact, you can do these calculations if you're curious, if you're going to lobby for this. Another great aspect of our funding is how well we work with other federal agencies and other funding sources, right? We're very keenly aware of the complexities of a redevelopment of a brownfield site and the capital stack that can go into that, both in short and long-term uses. So we have worked successfully with our partners and other federal agencies, especially historic tax credits, revolving loan funds, brownfield remediation financing, which is key today. The build grants, the 708 loans, 504 loans, these come in when you're looking down the length of the project, and a lot of times they're seen towards the economic development side of things. You're bringing jobs into a community. We can look at all those different layers and help assist, and we work fantastically well with all of them. So bringing it home here to Maryland, Quick calculations. So the Section 1 Loan Authority, you saw how we pulled up this math before. We took your CDBG allocation, multiplied by 5, and I removed anything that was existing outstanding projects or loans that were already there. And just to give you a glimpse of what's available in some of these areas, I think we have it broken down by the state and then other counties and cities. There's a few more borrowers in here, but you can see that there's substantial sums of money that could be put towards potential projects. Just find your area. So I'm going to kick it over to Erik to talk more about the CDBG program itself and do a little deeper dive. Just left and right.
Thanks, Sean. So as Sean already mentioned, that Section 108 is a component of the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is a formula grant that cities above 50,000 and counties above 250,000 receive automatically from HUD every year. So, the program focuses on, economic development, public facilities, housing, and, public services. And the principal goal is to benefiting low and moderate income individuals. So 70% of the funding from that program has to go towards that goal. So, as you can see here, that, our goal is to develop, viable communities, so providing decent housing, suitable living environment, and expanding economic opportunities. So, I mentioned that, what the CDBG entitlement communities are, but if you happen to not be a CDBG entitlement community, the money would go through the state. And in that case, so the state would be serving as a pass-through entity. Similarly, we have subrecipients, which can be a nonprofit or a developer or something like that. So the money flows through an entitlement entity and goes straight to the subrecipient. So and we also have some other options available, so like a designated public agency, like any agency that can issue debt, so it could be like a housing authority or a redevelopment agency can also, apply for a Section 108 loan. Okay. So as I mentioned, we have some, goals for the CDBG program. So we have our main one is going to be benefiting low and moderate income individuals. So that one, 70% of the program funding for a year has to go towards that goal. But when it comes to, brownfields, redevelopment, remediation, elimination of slum and blight is also commonly used. And then a lesser known one that we have is urgent need, and that would be like, after responding to a disaster or something like that. But we don't see that one too frequently. So just to, as Sean mentioned earlier, we have lots of different uses, and we can be used in lots of different phases. So, we have pre-development and development phases. Oh, yeah. So with the pre-development, we can be used with acquisition or demoing a site, or, we can do site preparation, remediation, and relocation. And that's particularly important if you're dealing with residents. And then as far as development goes, it can be used for, real estate development, can be used for machinery and equipment, working capital and infrastructure. So, implementing like sewer and utilities on site is something that Section 108 can be used for. So just, to go through the process, it's divided into like, we have the application phase. So we're, we work with the local government to, implement their project and make sure that it's, compatible with our regulations and our underwriting standards. So from there, we issue a commitment. So and that's not when we issue the money. So then we have to go through the financing stage, where that is where we work out the legal documents and, get all those documents executed and have the lawyers, work things out. And then that's when we can issue the money, once all that, those documents are executed and agreed upon. And then from there, there's the project implementation phase, then the servicing phase. And servicing, can go up to 20 years, and we're with you every step of the way. If you have any questions that come up during that time, if there's an issue with the project, after it's been completed, we can work with you. And, as Sean discussed earlier, we have dedicated, one-on-one technical assistance. So, we will help for, if you have an idea or something like that, we'll talk with you. So, some other things, just to go in a little bit more granular detail. So, with the application phase, we will also be happy to look at like a pre-application or a draft application, just to make sure when you submit it, it goes through through the process a lot quicker. A lot of our delays in processing applications comes from just people or communities not understanding like what the appropriate national objective or eligible activities are. So if we can get that worked out ahead of time, that speeds up the process. And then the environmental review, we have that as part of our process. It's not necessarily required before that application, but it's required before any choice limiting activities are made, and also, required before, funding is issued. And then, we do the final application and approval. And then, as mentioned, we have the legal review and the draft the documents, during the financing phase. And then, there's the project execution, and we have to, report the necessary accomplishments, so Congress can see, the results of our program's funding. And, then we have subsequent advances. And then, servicing parts. So it's, loan repayment, servicing, and things like that. So with the Section 108 program, we have two different ways we can use the funding. Sometimes it can be used for project specific. So you have a specific project in mind or projects, and you can go into great detail about the underwriting and the various details of the project. And so it requires a high degree of specificity when you're submitting. But we also have what is called a loan fund, and this is more general. So it's basically a pool of money that you can decide to focus on a certain area. It could be like brownfield remediation or acquisition or some economic development, some thematic or geographic component. We will review the underwriting, so then we'll issue a commitment based on the proposed underwriting, and then from there individual projects will be approved by the field office to make sure they meet programmatic, and then we'll review to see if they meet the underwriting requirements that are laid out in the original application. But this gives you a lot more flexibility because the commitment's already been made. So in that point, you just, we can issue money a lot quicker through the loan fund method. And just, some potential structures for a brownfield acquisition loan fund is, the local government can get the fund and set up two different types of loan funds, for example. So, you could do, one side would be doing acquisition and remediation activity, another one could be doing infrastructure improvements. Then another one could be funds could be going to a subrecipient who's then doing acquisition. And then and construction costs for, another site. So, just we have a lot of flexibility on what you can do with it. The only thing that we can't do, unfortunately, to the people that came before us is we cannot, do land banking. Our projects have to meet a national objective, so it has to accomplish something. So it could be, remediating land for affordable housing. It could be remediating the land, for some future development. And it also could just be, if it's based on slum and blight, it could just be the simple act of remediating the property. So just, as I mentioned earlier, the eligible uses that we often see fall under the categories of economic development, housing, public facilities, and infrastructure. But then, as you can see, there's lots of different, categories within that. So, so with remediation and acquisition, we'll often see like public facilities and infrastructure is a common one, but then we also see economic development, like this particular building that we're in is an economic development project. And then, we have some examples that we can go over. So let's see. So we have, this is just an example out of Waltham, Massachusetts. There's a landfill and remediation. So it was just they worked with, they did this one on an area benefit, so it benefited the area, the residents in the area. So 51% or more of the residents were low and moderate income individuals, and they, remediated a known environmental contamination. Okay, and then like this one is, just a demolition and flood control out of Meriden, Kentucky. So they just, this is another area benefit project, but in this case, they did acquisition, construction, and the installation of a public facility. So the flood control aspect is the public facility component. And then we have this one where it's a economic development project in Burlington, Vermont, and this one used another grant at the time, which is a Brownfield economic development grant. And this one, is an economic development project, and the national objective was job creation. So 51% of the jobs were made available to or occupied by low and moderate income individuals. And then there's just another project for economic development in Worcester, Massachusetts, and it's job creation and economic development again, but it's just like a remediation of a vacant industrial facility. And then finally, we have a remediation in Cleveland, Ohio, where they then created a cooperative for farmers in Cleveland. And this would be another job creation and an economic development activity. But they remediated a plot of land and created a farmers co-op. And then just these are some general resources that we have available, like our borrowing capacity that Sean mentioned. We have some application tools that lays out what we need in an application. And then we also have a newsletter if anybody's interested, and project profiles if you're looking for ideas. And if there's any questions, don't hesitate to let us know. Our emails are here. You can contact us through our website.
Yes, if anybody has any questions, feel free to come up. Yep, and I'll follow up as well.
Thank you. I have a few questions. These loans are obviously made to counties, cities, states. Can a spread be charged to a third-party developer, an interest rate spread, by the county, state, or city?
All right, these are loan guarantees, and first of all, there's a loan fee associated with the loan guarantee, but the borrower, if he's relending the money to a third party, will be able to add a spread to that. Of course, that will have to be careful. You don't want to price yourself out or put an extra burden on that third party and make it the loan guarantee a little bit more expensive than the market, right? But yes, it is approved. It is allowable to put a spread on that.
Okay. You'd mentioned that block grants are the primary source of collateral. So if you have a $3 million loan, do you have to actually set aside those block grants in a reserve account, or do you have to pull them out? Right. Of your block grant allocation, set them aside?
So as Sean and Eric mentioned, the CDBG Community Block Development Grant is used as a primary source of collateral. Because of the Credit Reform Act of 1990, all agencies that provide loans or provide loan guarantees are required to obtain additional collateral. And that collateral can be in the form of a lien on a property, the service reserve account, but the primary collateral by statute will be the CDBG allocation. However, that is just a pledge. The CDBG is not obligated, so entities that receive the CDBG directly, they can continue carry on their activities as per their strategic plan or annual plan. It's just a pledge that if something goes wrong, that will be the CDBG will be the primary source of collateral, because we obtained such a low interest rate because those certificates, as Sean mentioned, when we go to the market and we sell those trust certificates, they are backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. So when we are not only pledging that we're going to pay, but we're also pledging that we're going to timely pay, and that's why we have to go to the CDBG in case there's a delay from the entity.
What happens if the community has spent down its CDBG allocation in a given year, and then all of a sudden there's some sort of default?
No, we work with the community, and we work on that. We track the expenditures of the communities. We have that capability, and every time we are processing payments, we look at their expenditure and their balance level, and if we see that something might happen, we can put a hold on that. But that rarely happens. That's a little bit too much up there.
All right, well, thanks.
Just to make sure that we want to emphasize that the communities that can access the 108 are the entitlement communities, which are communities with a population higher than 50,000, urban counties. The non-entitlement communities or small communities, they obtain this assistance through the state. The state also can access the funds. However, they are passed through entities, and they will have to have a recipient in the form of a small community that receive the funds to implement the programs. This is a great tool. We provide, and I think Sean mentioned it, from vision to completion. That's our motto for providing assistance. So if we have provided enough information to pique your curiosity and to make you aware that this financing tool is available to communities, just for your information, when you're familiar with CDBG, realize that $1 of CDBG is leveraged 5 times with the Section 108. And that Section 108 is leveraged $4.62. So you're talking 1 times 5 times 4.62. And that's a lot of leveraging that the Section 108 allows your community to use. And the flexibility, that's another thing that I want to emphasize. The flexibility in terms of the repayments, collateral, we work with you. We will and that's why we fit so well with all the different agencies and different activities that you saw during the presentation. Thank you.
I had a question. It seems like one of the challenges, you're trying to help low and moderate income households primarily, but some of the communities, local governments, for example, that have a large number of low and medium households may not have a much revenue to take on a loan. What kind of creative and flexible measures do you have to enable a smaller community that doesn't have a lot of revenue to take on a loan like this and help their community?
Right. So let's take from the you're talking about the national objective, by statute and the regulations. The primary objective of CDBG is to assist low and moderate individuals, and low and moderate individuals are individuals who has lower than 80% of the area median income. So in terms of some small communities, so let's begin by saying that communities less than 50,000 in population, they are basically the non-entitlements that can access the funds through the state or urban counties, right? Urban counties are also entitlements. So in that case, some communities, they, like you mentioned, and that's a good, it's like an exception to the rule, what we call exception rate, because they have such a low population of low mod that the 51%, actually that is the requirement, that in order to assist LMIs, low moderate income, the activity has to benefit at least 51%. So you're leaving 49% that, but there's some communities that they don't even have 51%, and they will be treated as the top 5 percentile, and there's a calculation that we do that the 51 becomes probably 45. So that's one thing. The other fact is that, once again, the activity might primarily assist the entitlement communities, they must spend 70% of the CDBG grant assisting LMI. That's the meeting the primary objective. 70% of their grant has to go to LMI. So these communities, once again, depend on the type of activity. If it's benefiting an area, that area, specific area, call it service area, the population has to be 51%, or the beneficiaries of that area has to be LMI. 51% of those have to be LMI. So if it's housing, 51% of the units created has to be occupied by low-mod individuals. So it just depends on the activity, and once again, for smaller communities, they have to go to the state. And what we encourage is for those small communities that if they're interested, get in contact with us. We will try to match the state staff with them and see if something can be done. And one of the things that remind me, the flexibility in terms of the CDBG can be used. It's not only a source of collateral, this is a primary source of collateral, but it also can be used for repayment. And it is a great way to tie communities with public facilities. And the beauty of the Section 108 is that you can use future CDBG today and paid in up to 20 years. So that's not, during this inflationary period, that is a great way to carry out a project, because you can make that project today and then pay back in up to 20 years, which is the maximum term for the notes. Awesome.
I had one more question. How does then a private property owner connect to, for example, the case studies that you showed? Does the local government take on the property, clean it up using the funding, and then try to put it back on the market? How does that work in your experience?
Oh yeah, that is a great question and a great way to. First of all, remember the slide we presented that stated who has access to the Section 108? So a private developer or private owner of a property can get together, can partner, and the key will be the partnership that is forged with the local government that has entitlement to present a proposal, a business proposal. The local government can then access the 108. Then it is an eligible activity to relent the money for, let's say, an example for economic development, a site that needs to be like in this place, right? The project was eligible because HUD provided the funds to the city in turns, or the state, I'm not quite sure now, provided or relented the funds to a developer who paid back that loan to the city, and the city in turns used those project revenues or those payments to pay back the 108. So the activity was an economic development activity. I'm sure that there were some requirements for jobs that needed to be created for that activity, and at least 51% of those projects needed to go to benefit the low mods. So in that case, the main thing is to get in contact, the private developers need to get in contact with their entitlement communities or the small communities. They may say, you may find that they might not be aware of the 108, or they may not know about the 108. We are willing to get together with that community and provide the information enough information so they understand. We provide we call it a primer, Section 108 primer, which provide with all the information that allows the entitlements to understand the program, because we believe that that's the key for the success of the 108. The transparency, the understanding, so everybody knows what's going on, because after all, this is a financial situation. There's two components, the program requirements, but also the financial requirements. So both has to be met in order for the activity to be successful and eligible.
Just going to add, it's normally the community development offices and the local government that have access to the CDBG. You know, occasionally it's a different office, but most of the time it's community development.
Can I break everybody for lunch if there's no more questions? I'll steal your thunder.
Thank you, guys. Thank you to Jorge, Erik, and Sean from HUD, and thank you to Judd from earlier, from part one of our session.